All right. So again, we're going to highlight some of the similarities and some of the differences, focus primarily on the differences. So we're going to do a couple lines of code together for each of these blocks. So let's start here with how we write to the terminal. That's a difference, right? And that's going to be important, and that's going to be helpful. So quick comment here, JavaScript uses console.log instead of Java's system.out.println. Okay. So there's a difference, right? But that's not bad, right? So if we want to print something, we'll do console.log. And we can use single quotes for a string literal. So I can say hello world, because that's the first thing we always print in a new programming language. And it can look like that. So we can use single quotes or double quotes for a string literal. There's times we might want to use one more than the other, and we'll get to that later, but both work. Like Python, right? Is that a Python thing too? Okay, cool. But let's also do an example with double quotes, so you can see both of these. We can say, I'm learning JavaScript. Or at least I'm learning JavaScript. You all might already know JavaScript. You can put semicolons at the end, and that will be fine, or you can't, or you can opt not to. JavaScript doesn't care. So often I put them there just because I'm so used to it, but if you don't have them, that's fine. The backtick thing? Mm-hmm. And that will interpret stuff differently. We'll get to that later. Yeah. All right, so that's how we print. Very cool. Let's see, I want to show you one other thing, which is how we run this. So I said JavaScript usually runs in the browser on the client side, or with something like Node.js on the server side, but in VS Code, we can just run it ourselves. We can right click on the file like intro.js, and we can just choose run code if you've installed the recommended extensions. So I can hit run code. It brings up the output here. We can see it's running this thing. It's using Node.js to run this, and it prints out hello world. I'm learning JavaScript. Cool. Okay, so that's how we can run our stuff as we go. Variables. All right, there's some differences with variables. So let's go through these. One disclaimer here. JavaScript is a full-featured programming language. It's been around for like a long time. There's a lot of subtleties to it. I'm focused on having us become comfortable with and confident in like the bare minimum we need to be productive in developing web apps. There's a lot of other stuff here that we're not going to focus on because it's not a priority. So just be aware of that. Don't think like this is the whole picture. I'll show you some extension resources later if you're interested. But let's talk about declaring variables. Variable declaration. Here's my recommendations for this. We're going to use the keyword let. Okay, so JavaScript keyword let. When we use the keyword let, it is similar to a local variable in Java. Not exactly the same, but most similar. And it is, like a local variable in Java, block scoped, okay? Meaning outside of the block, that variable doesn't exist. All right, so that's what I mean by it's like a local variable in Java. And so the way we declare a variable is we say let x. I've just declared the variable x. Notice I did not specify a type for x because unlike Java, JavaScript is not strongly typed. Okay, so I can just say let x. Right? To assign a variable, when I assign a variable, it may be done after the variable declaration. Like I could do it up here. Or, I'm sorry, it could be done after the variable declaration, which we're about to type, or it could be done at the time of the variable declaration. So I could have declared it up here, but I chose not to. So I can just say x equals 7. That looks just like Java, other than the semicolon issue. Constants. By a constant, I mean an immutable value. Okay. So in Java, we use the word final. In JavaScript, we use a much better word, I think. We use the keyword const. This is like from the C world. I think const for constants makes a lot more sense than final. It is similar to the final keyword in Java. You'll notice I keep using words like similar and not same because there are subtle differences, but I'm trying to make those connections to you. So you're like, oh, I get this. When it's a constant, it may be initialized at the same time as the declaration or later. You just can only initialize it once. So we can have something like const hostname, same convention as Java, all caps, underscores in between words for our constants. And I'm going to assign this to localhost as our host name here. Okay. One more thing that we're not going to use, but I'm sure you're going to see, so I feel it's important to share with you, is that sometimes instead of let, you will see the var keyword used. The var keyword is an older way of declaring variables, and there's a lot of old JavaScript out there, so I'm sure you're going to see it. Connecting it back to Java, it is similar to local variables defined at the top of a method. Even if the var keyword is used later in the method, it's as if it's like a Java local variable that you did declare at the top. So that's a weird thing. But here's the thing, we're not going to use it. It is rarely used in modern JavaScript. Okay, so we're not going to use var, but I'm sure you're going to see var. So I just want you to know what it means. So when I say var y equals 11 here, it's really as if up here, I said let y equals 11. Okay, but we're not going to use the var thing. Congratulations. You know everything you need to know about declaring variables and assigning them in JavaScript, right? Lots of similarities with Java. Let's take a look at primitive types. There are some similarities and there are some differences. Okay. Let's focus on numbers first. So in JavaScript, a number represents, the type is number, okay? And it represents both integer and floating point values. It's most similar to a double in Java, just for comparisons. So I can say let a equal 7. Okay, the type of a is now a number. I can also say a equals 3.14. The type of a is still a number. And if I log it, so I can do console.log, and I can use the keyword type of, and this will log not the value of a, but the type of a. And so if I run intro.js again, we will see that the type of the variable a is number. Okay. So variables in JavaScript do have types. They're just not strongly typed, just like Python. So for those of you familiar with Python, you can make that connection. Another primitive type, this is a difference between Java and JavaScript. String is a primitive type in JavaScript. That's a big difference with Java, right? We always wanted string to be like a primitive type in Java, and we get confused when it's not. But in JavaScript, it's not. Or in JavaScript, it is a primitive type. So that's kind of exciting. It is a primitive type in JavaScript. How do we do these things? Literals, like string literals, are enclosed in single or double quotes We saw that up above. Here's what Connor was referring to a moment ago. Backticks enable what are called template strings. And we're going to see an example of that in a moment. The string primitive type, however, is similar to Java's string class, even though it's a primitive type. So let's see some examples. We can say A equals hello. Notice that we can dynamically change the type of a variable, right? A was a number. We just made it a string. Okay, if we tried to do that in Java, that wouldn't work, right? We can't assign a string to a type like a double. But JavaScript's like, no problem, all good. So now if I do console.log type of A, it will print out string. It's a string. Cool. Let's see this backtick thing. Let B equals, so I'm using the backtick character, which again is like on the same key as the tilde, but you don't hold the shift, so it's above your tab key. The backtick character is 3 plus, let's do 3 plus 4 in curly brackets, and then world. This is called variable embedding with the curly brackets. Okay. The backticks come from, it's very common in Unix scripting, Linux scripting, as a way of like executing commands inside of strings. So it's very powerful. By putting the 3 plus 4 in the curly brackets, the way that the JavaScript interpreter does this is it says, oh, look, I've got this embedded chunk here. I'm going to evaluate the thing in the curly bracket first. 3 plus 4 is 7. Then I'm going to make that part of the string and print it out. So when I run intro.js, did it not? Oh, I didn't print it. Sorry, let's actually add a log here. Console.log B. Now I'll run it. That's not what I expected. What do I need? Where's the $sign go? Here? Oh. All right, let's try this again. Glad someone in here knows JavaScript. There we go. Cool. Another type. Boolean. Boolean is a primitive type. Guess what? It is similar to Java's Boolean type. A equals true. Console log type of A. So we're changing the type of A yet again. Boolean. You may notice that when I'm saving this file, semicolons are being added. Okay, they're not required in JavaScript, and I haven't typed any of them, but the Java or the VS Code extension I have called Prettier is a code formatter. So every time I save a file, it formats that file based on like the defined file formatting conventions. And part of that is to put semicolons in. Okay. So that's what's going on there in case you're like, where are these coming from? Why is my file looking different? It's all part of our Prettier formatting tool that's automatically invoked when we save a file, which is super cool. That's important for a couple of reasons. It's important to me because I'm very particular about things and I like things a certain way. And so I like tools that make them that way. But that's a very personal thing that I'm working through. It's important for teams because if all your code is formatted the same way, when you're working as a team on a big project and you're changing the same file, You're not going to end up with GitHub merge conflicts because your formatting is different. You're only going to deal with GitHub merge conflicts when you literally change like the same lines of code in the same file. So there are very good reasons from a team-based perspective, not just my personal like idiosyncrasies. So, all right, there's Boolean, which is misspelled. There we go. Two more types. These are not like things in Java. These are weird. One type in JavaScript is null. Okay, in Java, null is a value, right, for a reference that doesn't exist. In JavaScript, null is a primitive type with only one value, and that one value is null. So null is both a primitive type and the value. That's kind of strange. We use null in JavaScript to represent nothing or something that is empty or something that is unknown. Okay, there's a connotation to the value null. It means nothing, empty, or unknown. Okay, so that's what it does mean. It's not that same as a reference to a non-existent object like in Java. So here, my rephrase that is an awkward sentence. It's not like a reference to a non-existent object in Java. So we're going to use null to represent nothing, empty, or unknown, not to mean, hey, we don't have a reference to some object, right? We haven't made that new object yet. So null means something very different. So definitely watch out for that. We can say a equals null, and then we can do console.log, again, type of a. Well, here, let's run this and then we'll write a comment about this. I get frustrated with JavaScript sometimes. But it's still here. So the type of A is now object, not null. All right. Yeah. So we run into things like this in JavaScript. This is a bug. So this returns object. I don't know why, but I do. Actually, it's an old bug in JavaScript. Okay. So because of an old bug in JavaScript, when you use the type of keyword on a variable of type null, it actually prints object instead of null. They can't fix it because there's probably a lot of code out there that's dependent upon that behavior. So we're stuck with it. So just a heads up. Yeah. I copied and pasted it from my notes. I don't know how to type that thing. It's like some weird Unicode character. I just always keep it around like in a document, and when I need it, I paste it. I don't know how to do this character here. That's the one that gets me. All right, last primitive type. This is, again, one that's not in Java. It's called undefined. Undefined is a primitive type with only one value. You're going to love this. Undefined, right? Makes sense. Here's what we use undefined for. It is the value of a variable that has not been explicitly assigned a value. It is similar to null being assigned to an instance variable in Java. Okay. So in Java, we declare an instance variable for a class. We make but we don't explicitly initialize it in the constructor. Java automatically initializes it to like null or 0 or false or whatever that is. That's how undefined is used in JavaScript. So if I say let C, and then I do console log C, but I've never initialized it, I've never assigned it a value, and then I can also log the type of C, we can see that the value of C is undefined, and the type of C is also undefined. So like null, undefined is both a type, a primitive type, and a value. Last section for today. Let's look a little bit about conditionals and Boolean expressions. So first, an important note, which will help this all make sense. All values in JavaScript have an implicit Boolean value due to JavaScript's type coercion. So we can evaluate any value as a Boolean. Okay, let me show you some examples. If 1, okay, that's a number, and hello, that's a string. And we will say console.log. If that's true, we're going to log 1 and hello are true. So if I run this, 1 and hello are true. Yeah. So any number other than 0, as we're going to see in a moment, and any string other than the empty string is considered true. So let's look at the false cases. If 0 or empty string or null or undefined, if any of those are true, but they're not, 0, empty string, null, and undefined are not true. So we'll add an else, and we'll say console.log 0, empty string, null, and undefined are false. So the only number that is false is 0. The only string that is false is the empty string. I meant to do empty string as this. Oh, I guess it gets changed. Whatever. Null is false, undefined is false. Let's do one more. We'll do some questions. Variables of different types are converted to numbers for comparison. What do I mean by that? We can say things like if the string 34 is equal to 34, and it is, console.log 34 is converted to 34 and then compared to 34. That's what's going on here. We can also say things like if 3 is not equal to true, console.log true, this is weird, true is converted to 1 and then compared to 3. What? Who writes code like this? But here's the rule, just to remember, because that's strange, right? Always when you're looking at these types of Boolean statements, these comparisons with the comparison operators, everything is converted to a number first, and then the comparison is done, okay? So the reason why that's potentially confusing is that 3 is true, but 3 is not equal to true, right? Like this is the wonders of JavaScript. Okay. So if you are to run this, you'll actually see 34 is converted, true is converted to 1.